Namaste, Satnam, welcome, blessings, aho. Oh my goodness, I'm so blessed to be here. Stewart and I have had a tremendous weekend,
Yeah.
just full of energy shifts, preparing us for this lovely symposium. So I will take just a brief moment to allow Stewart Pearce to introduce himself, but he's always so humble. So I will just introduce him a little bit first. He is an absolute master. An alchemy master, a legendary master of voice. He's coached people from around the world and universe for that matter, probably, if we count parallel existences. And he is just absolutely glorious. I'm honored to call him my friend and my colleague, and we've known each other for quite some time. And I don't work with too many people, but when he and I choose to work together, we just do, and we just blend amazingly. So he's worked with some of the likes of Diana, Princess of Wales, and we'll just start there, but everywhere, all around the world, famous celebrities and beautiful people. And look at him, see, he doesn't like to take it. So humble, but a very sacred being and channel of the angels and just a beautiful alchemist combining light and sound and all sorts of techniques. So I've been following his work for about 5 years now. And how long have we known each other? At least 2 or 3 now, just chatting back and forth. And we decided to start working together last year.
It's 3 years. It's 3 years. So
It's been 3 years. It has.
Yes. 3 years. Yes. Yeah. And I'd heard about you, and I think you'd heard about me before that through people.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was really important to come together, and we were sort of like magnetic pulling.
Yeah.
I was in New Mexico. I remember when we first started speaking in Santa Fe.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I remember that too. And through our mutual following and students and colleagues, we just ended up just like magnets, just like you said. So, and then we met in person at his Voice of Change in London. I believe it was September of this year. And I just couldn't pull myself away from him. I'm like, really? I have to go home now? Huh.
And also your amazing workshop about Lilith and Halal. That was extraordinary. Absolutely extraordinary.
Thank you.
We rocked London.
Yeah.
May I introduce you?
Please. If you like.
I think everybody probably knows Pamela, but for my own 2 cents worth, I just want to say that it is an absolute honor to be sitting on screen with Pamela, even though that we are thousands and thousands of miles apart, because she is a lady of a very rare degree of embodied grace and love. So this, ladies and gentlemen, is a woman who walks her talk, and of course, as we know, has experienced her spiritual wisdom as an initiate over many, 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 many years, from Native American wisdom keepers that are part of her blood lineage and spiritual lineage, all the way through the ascended masters and into I see her as being an evocation of divine grace as far as the female archetype is concerned. And so I know that you're surrounded by Sophia, you're surrounded by Kuan Yin, by Mary, by Magdalene, and also by Diana. And that's just to mention a few. There are many. So this is an absolute pleasure to share this very unique platform with you, because I know that whenever we're together, our energies are amplified. And so the fontal that seems to be the portal, the cosmic portal into divine witness, comes through, and the cosmic mind just flows, which is just exquisite. After the weekend that you spent in London, I remember I dreamed for a week, potential dreams of immense splendor, where there I was literally being carried into 5th, 6th, 7th dimension and being taught by some of the extraordinary teachers that love to work through you. So,
welcome, dreamer of the dream. So blessed to be here with you. When Stewart and I originally came together to offer this workshop to you in this beautiful symposium, the idea that we had was to discuss earth angels, why they come in, what purposes you may feel that you're incarnating with, what particular gifts arise, what it's like to be embodied in this experience as an earth angel, both of the challenges and some of the glories. And I couldn't think of any better person to really sit here and talk about angels with other than this angel. So I would like to begin by allowing all of you to just kind of bounce ideas off of us. Now would be a good time to place your questions about your experience, your challenges, anything that you feel you would like to, ask this channel here. Stewart has a lot of knowledge about the angelics. And when we first were beginning to work together, I was working as a voice of the Elohim. And then suddenly seraphim started coming in, and then it just didn't stop. And that's one of the reasons why we kept connecting in this journey, is because of our connection to these various soul groups of angelics that we were observing coming through humanity, and how this is affecting the ley lines of the planet, how it's affecting ascension. I'm not particularly keen on that word, but since many people are, I use it. Whatever you want to call it. I love to call it the Great Awakening, and sometimes I call it the Great Undoing. Either way, there's a lot of beliefs that we bring through, and it can be a challenge to just see through that lens and define divine reality in and of itself. What's your take, Stuart, on why Earth Angels are here right now at this unique time?
I think it's important to discern that human beings take on the vestiges and the attributes of angels. And really what we're talking about is the fact that we have, through countless lives, particularly this one, because this is a great time of undoing, as you were saying, that we're transiting and developing a quality of light within ourselves that is very unique in the conscious evolution of our peoples, of our species. And I feel that this is also to do with a great meeting point between the angelic kingdom and we humans, because they are also extraordinarily aware of great shifts and the great transitions that are taking place on our planet. So I would like to say, what they teach me is that this is the third great wave of angelology since the beginning of creation. This is what they suggest. The first being creation, the second being the time that we know as Renaissance. And there are pockets of Renaissance. I believe that we're living a Renaissance right now. It's just that we can't call it that, because that would be conceited, because we're living it. But the children that come, when we have gone, will be referring to this as being a Renaissance. It'd be interesting to know whether it's the Trump Renaissance or or the Elizabethan Renaissance, or the global Renaissance, possibly, because all of our communities are coming together. So I feel that there's this great meeting point between heaven and earth. And as a result of that, those of us who have either been called, those of us that have worked certainly on the vibrational currency of our field, and therefore are living the pulsation of love and light, living through the rhythm of grace and inclusivity and empathy and compassion. But what's taking place is that, and these are not clever ideas, these are about an embodied witness. So that deep within our bodies, our cells are expanding to accommodate 65, 70% atomic fusion. I would like to refer to the bodhisattvas that we have living with us at this time, that they're probably vibrating, what would you say, 80, 85, 90% atomic fusion, because they've been through countless lives. I'm referring to His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Amachi, and some of the extraordinary avatar that we have had experience with in flesh and now have experience of in spirit. I'm thinking of Sai Baba, who drew me to witness 45 years ago, and I became one of his followers. And then when he passed into spirit, which is now about 8 years ago, he still comes through to me. And in fact, he gave me this ring, which he manifested out of seventh dimension, which I still have. He said it would disappear, but I'm still wearing it. So this is cool. It's the Om, for anybody wanting to know. So just as a reference, these are what we're referring to as the bodhisattvas. And I'm mentioning just a few, of course. So I feel that that's what the extraordinary meeting point is at this time. And let's face it, our planet needs this degree of angelic counsel, both in terms of the unseen ones and we as seen witness. Angels is an extraordinary honor to know that we are earth angels. I feel that this means in many ways that we've earned our stripes and that we respond through all our life processes, whether they be deliciously beautiful or excoriatingly challenging, that we respond to them without reaction, that we respond to them in response, rather than reacting some emotional behavior that we've always reacted to before, which is often to do with defense or to do with isolation or to do with anger or to do with a lack of compassion. But what we're doing is moving into new responses where we detach, feel stillness, observe, and automatically bring grace and compassion and empathy and inclusivity through. It might be interesting to know from our witness today, the wonderful people that are listening in, what they feel are the essential qualities or prerequisites or idiosyncrasies or characteristics of earth angels. It might be interesting if anybody wants to comment on the chat board.
Yes, we definitely want to know what you are experiencing, what your challenges are with this mission this time around. And I've been writing down some of my observations that are being channeled through automatic writing as we're speaking, Stewart. And I feel that this mission this time is, I call it the bridge of consciousness. You were discussing before, would it be Trump or something else? And it's sort of a, it's always been a divine feminine archetype or a divine masculine archetype or something, some dualistic notion of something as opposed to something else. And when I was up at the mountain offering my divine blessings of grace, for all of you this weekend at the Grand Canyon, I asked for a little message to come through, and I was over at Jacob Slaughter Inn, and I was looking through some of the, Pueblo and Hopi and, what else, the Paiutes, so many different types of prayer bowls, and of course we were offered one, and we took three. We paid for two, and we were given one. So that was an amazing experience to be offered a prayer ceremonial bowl by a Paiute who was working there. So that was beautiful. I'm like, you're giving me the bowl that you made for free? I think I'm gonna cry now. Of course, we offered it back to nature, and I said, I am looking for a message, and he said, it's over there. So I walked over to the window, and there was a book full of ancient Paiute and Hopi sayings. And you know how you sometimes just do this, whether it be with tarot cards or books or pamphlets or whatever's in front of you. And I just kind of got the book. And I just for the book, I went, here. Do you do that sometimes?
Yeah.
And what came through was an interesting message about oneness. And it was from a Navajo elder, and it was an anonymous Navajo elder, and I memorized it for you today.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and he said, the white people consider the mind, body, and spirit as separate in essence. And the Navajo believe that the mind and the body and the spirit are one. And we are breathing, walking, drinking, absorbing the lights and sounds of the Great Spirit simultaneously. We perceive no separation. Spirit is in everything from the moment we awaken until the moment we go to sleep. No matter what we're doing, it's all spirit. And it just really just lifted me. And of course, I will always remember this saying, this anonymous Navajo elder saying, and it reminded me of, being a bridge of consciousness where it's not divine masculine or divine feminine. It's not just the body. It's not just the mind. It's not just the spirit. Everything is spirit. And we are becoming spirit. And mind makes an excellent servant to the heart, not so much of a master. So I believe that we're here as earth angels this time around to be this bridge for these two allegedly opposing forces to come together in oneness. Where the body and the mind are working as spirit, and it is an age of transformation and transcending the two teams is what the angels often correlate this with when I ask. And I believe that it has to do with the catalysts, which have always been the divine masculine on our planet, and the activators, which have always been represented by the divine feminine. So a lot of the earth angels that are coming through, the activators and the divine feminine are walking through some galactic heritage and bringing it into their DNA, into their ancient songs, into their ancient ceremonial healings, into everything that they're doing. And it's of a Lemurian essence, and it's
Yeah.
of a Pleiadian essence. It's of a Lyran feline, from Lyrise. It's all the galactic essences coming through. And then there's a bridge of consciousness where these beings are meeting the divine masculines that are coming through the Arcturians. They're coming through some of the reptilian beings, the Alpha Draconi. They're coming through the Alpha Centaurians. They're coming through many different, Atlanteans as well. And basically speaking, then you have some beings that are walking this line in between to bridge everything. And those of you who are walking that bridge and holding it for the divine masculine and divine feminine essence, you are what I call earth angels. And the mission is bridge of consciousness. When catalysts meet activators, again, the activators will send that seed of love and grace into the catalyst, and the catalyst will no longer find the need to catalyze anyone with the exception of awakening them to their divine wholeness. So this becomes a moment in time where we witness our own consciousness until the observer becomes the observed. And then our crystalline essence begins to shift. So, with all the beliefs that are here right now that we're incarnating, that are basically stuffed into our bodies from the moment we breathe a human breath, we are taught to be afraid. We are taught to be hungry. We are taught to seek money, sex, drugs, habits, everything that's opposite of God, if anything could be in a dualistic realm, in order to find it. So that's what dualism is. But the bridge of consciousness, the essence of the archangels who hold that mission, help you awaken to your divine reality, to where all of the crystalline nature begins to transform and transcend all of these dualistic beliefs, so that it's not a matter of the beliefs of I am not the body, which have been taught to us for the past 4,000 years at the very minimum. Through all of my ancient masters, there's been this thing of I am not the body, I am not the body, you are not the body, we are not the body. It's taught that. We're taught that in ACIM. We're taught that in every single Christ conscious book out there that I know of, including the Bible, if you want to call it that. So we're taught this, I am not something. And what came to me upon my greatest awakening was this message. And it said, how can God not be everything? And I began to realize that this belief, I am not the body, although bringing through many beloved masters, I have to look back at the way that they actually ascended and the body fell away. Because if you say God isn't something, God goes, okay, you're God, so be it. And so it is. So those masters left that body behind. So after 18 and a half years of telling myself that I am not the body as an earth angel on this planet, I began to say, oh, of course, I'm using this beautiful body. I am becoming this beautiful body. The God essence is activating this beautiful body until it is spirit. And I will not separate myself any further, because separation is death. Hear me, earth angels. Separation is death. So while we're all immortal, spiritually speaking, if you would like to activate through this physical form, my suggestion to you is to realize that God is not as simple as that. And that's my take on it. So we begin
so beautiful. Yeah. And is so coherent or so incongruent with what the angels have been sharing with me recently, and bringing me to a further recognition of the Antakarana, of the Rainbow Light Bridge, and how the Rainbow Light Bridges are becoming so implicit within the significance of what you were sharing at the heart of the way that this vibrational council thus far on planet Earth for the last 15,000 years has been one of duality. And now we're changing this. And I guess one of the easiest ways that we humans change this is by becoming emotionally intelligent. Would you agree that feeling is the language of the soul? And that what we are choosing now, rather than constantly experiencing the copiousness, the capacity of woe and sorrow, anxiety, not that we dismiss those emotions, we love those emotions, but immediately become conscious of transmuting them into joy
Much
with the
more.
birthright and the soul right,
Yeah.
I believe, if one can say that,
Mm-hmm.
of the fact that we are moving into a vibrational frequency where joy is a sustainable energy.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that this is what we see on our living bodhisattva, that we see a quality of fun, a quality of joy, a quality of levity, a quality of immense open-heartedness that is gracious and graceful and grace held. So we talk of them as the charismatic, don't we? Because the charisma of the charity is so emboldened and so ennobled that they live this bridge, this stairway of heaven between heaven and earth. You know, and it's very interesting when you were talking about oneness and how you were connecting, because this afternoon I had a telephone conversation with Renata Heinemann, and she and her husband, they're Scandinavian. About 12 years ago, they felt completely dismayed and despairing about the lives that they were living and bringing three beautiful children into this world, that they decided that they would go and live with Inuit people. And so they went and lived with Inuit people for a month in Alaska. And they lived with the native peoples. And then began, to cut a long story short, an entire journey into the process of oneness by living with wisdom keepers all over the planet. A wonderful Native American wisdom keeper who is in Michigan. And then, for example, an Aboriginal shaman, a female shaman in Australia. And they just brought out a movie called Down to Earth, which is an experience of working with all of these wisdom keepers and what they were taught about oneness. So it ties in absolutely with what you were just sharing with us at the beginning of your homily. And I found that really extraordinary. And for example, gentle reminders like how the mind-driven consciousness of the Western world is something that we're slowly beginning to realize is malfunctional because it's created the confusion and the chaos within our social systems, within our socio-political systems. And now we're recognizing that something radical is needed. And so we're moving into the awareness of the intuitive and the imaginal. And how that ties in absolutely with the Wisdom Keepers' teachings, because whichever voice was speaking, wherever they happened to be in the world, and they moved through the whole geography of the world, meeting Wisdom Keepers, their three children were lodestones. The three children were magnetics. So the Wisdom Keepers came out of the bush to the children first, not to the adults. So these three little earth angels were the shining stars that the wisdom keepers, whether they be Aboriginal or Maori or Brazilian shaman or Native American, North, South, oops, you name it, it was just the children who brought the extraordinary wisdom forward. And how each person, each wisdom keeper, it felt, Renata was saying, that they were having the same conversation wherever they were over the world. And we know that the native peoples have this ability, as you were sharing just now, of being really to move into the Antakarana and into the heart energy, which they use as their electromagnetic transmitter. So they feel as though they're talking with their brothers and sisters in other continents. And I just wanted to share this final thought, that they were teaching imagination, faith, and unconditional love as the three essential prerequisites of oneness, and that what they were asking for is that their white brothers in the cerebral world could concentrate on what is coming to your mind, not what is moving from the mind. Because we've been educated to feel that we have to produce conceptualization, creativity that is from the mind rather than what are we receiving.
Wow.
And so, I'd love to drop this final thought in response to what you were sharing. That one of the things that impressed me most 30 years ago when I worked with a Native American shaman in New Mexico was that he said, you teach dissension. And he said it was the greatest gift, that we weren't in the ascension process. We weren't trying to get out of our bodies. We were trying to draw spirit deep into the body. And as a result of that, we weren't lowering our vibration. We were heightening and amplifying our vibration by allowing spirit, all the varying aspects of the energetic that we perceive as being spiritual, into every cell of our being.
I know what you're saying. I call it incension.
Incension.
Yeah, it's just a new word that came out of my mouth one day.
It's brilliant.
Thank you. What was coming through as you were speaking was creating heaven on earth, and that those earth angels who were unfolding this bridge of consciousness were doing so, and they were able to hold a space for all the tension, the explosive anger, the rage, the anxieties, et cetera, et cetera. If you need to depart, and you're welcome to stay as well.
No, he's full.
Okay. Okay. And it's because of the energy of compassion, which works hand in hand with grace. We can't just stuff away what we're taught to feel because the ego is incessantly convincing, right? So that would be disingenuous to say we don't feel what we feel coming through such a very difficult time. Yet what's exciting about this time is, for the first time that I've experienced Earth, in millions of years in my Earth experiences, we now have the resources, we now have the technology and industry, we have the intelligence, we have so much access in everything, in wisdom, yet we have not realized as Earth angels that we are not a human doing, we are a human being. And if we could just grasp that one key of consciousness,
Yes.
the being, allowing the imagination to be the vehicle of divine conscious creation. The New Age communities, I hear this quite often, because I began my journey teaching to New Age communities. And what I hear mostly is, I'm done. I surrender to whatever this is. I don't like it, and I want to go home. If you are creating heaven on earth, you are home. You are home. You have many parallel existences through which you can float away as angels in spirit, okay? You're doing that somewhere else right now, simultaneously and quite effectively, because there's no way to be ineffective at being God, right? So you have this grand opportunity for the first time for the great undoing, followed by the great awakening, in the most glorious ascension heaven on earth project that has ever existed. Yet what I hear is, I'm out. I want to get out of here. So I urge you to please hang in there a little bit longer. This is why I created Blessings of Grace as my service to you for free, as an offering for those of you who just say, okay, I'm done, I'm done, I'm done, I'm done, I'm done. Please don't be done. If you're done with pain, be done with pain and put that on God's altar. If you're done with anger, be done with that and put that on God's altar, and allow a blessing of grace in your life, and just be open to your heart and to your feeling, and just step into the power and the innocence of the divine Christed child within you. Step into your innocence. It's okay to admit that you feel done, Earth angels around the world who are listening to us today. And that is why we're here. I too am not exempt to feeling done. My body is constantly trying to just since my enlightenment, it's been trying to leave, because I had been telling it that it is of no consequence and of no great nature, and that it isn't anything but a big old heap of food that I had accumulated, and all of these rather neutral, essentially unloving things for 18 and a half years. So now you see my struggle. My struggle is not with my gifts or my spirit. My struggle is with my form. So please, we understand what you're going through, but these are ascension keys. This is happening because your body is literally transmuting all these beliefs that have been thrust upon you since the moment you exited your mother's womb. The first thing you did was breathe and cry. So I urge you to breathe when you're crying, to connect with the divine element of the ancestral wind and allow that grace to fill your lungs. And if you must cry in the arms of Divine Mother, please do so. That is why I am here. Do so. By all means, become the innocent child that you are, and do not hesitate to be completely vulnerable, because in your vulnerability, your safety lies and your glory extends. We are transcending. The bodies are becoming light, and it hurts. It's okay to admit that it hurts. So these are some of the things. What's your take on some of these, ascension symptoms, as the New Age community continues to call it? What's your take on that, Stewart?
I feel they're wake-up calls to allow us to understand, again, to use the image of the bridge, how we are so secularized in the way that we isolate physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. And what I believe you and I do is to use those terms purely and simply to identify in a very discerning way what the nature of those four bodies are. But actually we're dealing with one body, we're dealing with holism. And that what we need to do is to really recognize the fullness of what the whole is, of what the holy communion of the meeting point between heaven and earth is within our bodies. So in order to achieve this, we need to slow down the frequency of feeling energies, meaning that we're so often caught by startle reflex, we're so often caught by shock, we're so often caught by surprise. And of course, when we look into the great advances in information technology today, all we have to do is to tune into a news broadcast. And I say to everybody, go on a news fast. Don't watch CNN or Fox, because all you'll be receiving are these pulsations of gamma ray that are designed to shock the nervous system. And what we need to do is to work on this aspect of being and stillness, so that we can feel that whatever the challenge, or indeed whatever the sublime bliss, that we're beginning to draw it into a collaborative and into an interconnected form, so that we can feel the angels and the ascended masters and mistresses by us, with us, for us, behind us, before us, above us, below us, so that we can lean into their power. The difficulty with many of us, I feel, is that we've been part of the social revolution, which has really been going on since the end of the 19th century, to develop our own sovereignty. So patriarchalism is no longer the form that is the modus operandi for us. We're all unplugging from this. And of course, in the great United States of America, we already have the formula of the Republic, which is about unplugging from the patriarchy, unplugging from the sovereignty. The difficulty with that process, and I believe this is only transitional, is that we've all become rather fixated on our own process. And as a result of that, a rare degree of egocentrism and narcissism has occurred, so that whenever we're experiencing an earth energy challenge or an earth angel challenge, we forget that we have thousands and thousands of unseen entities, the angelic communion, waiting to hold us, waiting to lift us into sanctity and healing and bliss. And so we need to remind ourselves, and of course what we like to do is to give all our power away to them. That's not the point. You know, so many, I'm doing a summit at the moment with Darius Barazande, who is just so beautiful. And so many people, gorgeous people, are coming through. Mostly ladies between 35 and 70, I think, mostly living in the United States of America. And the one question they asked me immediately was, can you tell me what the angels want me to do? And I say, that's not quite the way it works, my darling.
Right.
The angels will give teaching, sure, through oracular means, through synchronistic means, through miraculous means, through psychic or intuitive means. But what the angels do is to wait until you have decided what you wish to aspire to. And because it's of the higher denomination of feeling, they will amplify the way you are, rather than interrupting, intercepting, or doing it for you.
Oh, bless.
It's all part of narcissism, isn't it? You know, we love, no, take this from me. Like, we suddenly move into sacrificial victim mode. These are extraordinary columns of light, aren't they, that we're dealing with, all these great orbs. These are plasmic forces of vast proportion. Are human beings angels? No way. But we are taking on angelic attributes. You know, angels are angels and humans are humans. It's very simple. Are we just stating into that force? Well, why not? I mean, isn't that why we have Sandalphon and Metatron as articles? Because, as we know, the great Sandalphon was the prophet Elijah, who was seen to be pure in the eyes of the divine after 2,500 years of earth, or whatever it says in the Old Testament, and then ascended into heaven in a chariot of fire. And of course, similarly for Enoch, who wrote the book of creation. So I feel that they're the only, we know that at the moment they're the only two angels that we recognize that were human. And they're both extraordinary, they were extraordinary bodhisattva in their own right. For those of you who are thinking, what does this word mean that he keeps using? It means a living God.
Yes.
The proportion of the living God in Sanskrit. Anyway, I could go on and on and on and on. We're on a high here.
We love it when you do.
I'm thinking of you and I. So we're channeling all of this amazing energy. But it feels as though it's going very, very fast, but it feels as though it has a pulsation of light that is very unique in this moment, in these moments that we're sharing, to really bring down an element of very special. To me, I feel as though I'm fused by grace. That's how it feels. So that if there are any seeming joins in any aspect of my consciousness, that they're being fused by this eternal light, and that the angels are hostessing to bring this in.
I was getting the image as you were speaking that of a column, and it looked like a conduit type of column, and then there were sort of like jagged lines going through it, and as the light would come through those dark jagged lines, it would fill the lines like this all the way through.
Wow.
Yeah, that as you were speaking, that was the image that I was getting, and I don't seek to attach any meaning, but it's for us for some reason.
Yes, well, it makes sense to me. Because it's a form of the spiral, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
These energies move so often in cyclic or spiraling fashions on this level of vibration. Yes. So that makes absolute sense, and reminds me of the symbol of force that we see in the Egyptian hieroglyphics. That were the early language that the Egyptians used from the Atlantean civilization and the Lemurian civilization, which gave the understanding of how the entity within energy could be symbolized because of the bridge that they had between conscious and unconscious, or the cerebral and the metaphoric.
And you're talking about the alchemical symbol within this, the alchemy symbols, I believe. and one of them does represent all types of force, particularly centrifugal. Uh, and what I've been observing, as many of you who are, clients and students of, Stewart Pearce, and clients and students in my mentorship program, I've been observing an energy of the piezoelectrical field um, waving like in and out around the pineal and pituitary glands in particular, so that, because the majority of people who are operating in this consciousness currently have extremely calcified pineal glands, which isn't helping. So a lot of the tips that we would like to offer you today can cause you to kind of break up those crystals that are around the pineal gland, and break up some of the energy that's holding back the pituitary from working properly in the endocrine system. These are things from the alchemy standpoint that I would like to share with you. Because of all of the, as you call them, as many of you call them, the ascension symptoms, it would not be as difficult if you were to work with breath and light and sound in that order, until you cannot discern the difference between the three. So there was something unique that I do and still do, and I began to do it about 3 weeks prior to my enlightenment. And I don't know what to call it. I just do it and experience it. But I'm going to share the techniques with you today, and there's one that's incredibly important in the issues, so that you can open up the wavelengths of the piezoelectrical field around here. And then if you do that, everything in the chakra system starts from here and goes down. But first, you got to bring it into your root with breath and connect to the divine feminine, connect to Gaia. So what I would advise you to do is to kind of still your mind as much as you can, breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. If you could place your feet on the floor, if you haven't already, if not cross-legged, is just fine in the easy pose if you are a yogi. And just breathe in the golden coil. For those of you who follow Kundalini Yoga, you'll call this the Kriya coil, and you're familiar with it. It's a golden coil of light, and if this is your spine here, and up here's the top of the head, breathe in, and when you inhale, bring it all the way up to your head, right here, and then hold it. Hold the breath, and when you're retaining the breath, it's actually squeezing those crystals, okay? And when you exhale, flood your brain with golden particles of grace. Imagine that gold light just going, and then you're going to push the wavelength out. And then when you inhale, do it again from the bottom of the spine all the way up to the top, golden Kriya coil up. Hold it for a few moments, and this is pushing the wavelength in. You're pushing it against that calcified pineal gland. And when you exhale, just push it all throughout the brain, okay? When you do this practice, it's going to cause the wavelength to kind of go in and then out. And when you retain the breath, it's pushing in, and then you're exhaling. Okay, so this is what's happening around the pineal gland, so that all of that crystallized stuff can just burst. When you do that, eventually, the more often you do that, you're going to experience floods of bliss, ecstasy, feelings of compassion. You may release with tears if you feel the need to do that right now. If you've been practicing it, do it. But if you can do this for at least 10 to 20 minutes, preferably in the auspicious hours of the morning, which are between like 3:30 in the morning until around 6 a.m. is the perfect time to do this exercise. That will help with a lot of the ascension symptoms that I've been noticing Earth Angels experiencing. I, in particular, was born with a genetic immune system condition called cold agglutinin disease. And I don't like that word. So my blood just isn't particularly genetically prone to being in a human form this time around. So in the winter, I have issues. And when I do this, it heats up my entire body. All the blood cells start to regenerate. Because literally, if I get under 35 degrees Fahrenheit, my blood cells die. It's not a fun thing to end up, needing a blood transfusion several times a year. So when I begin to do this practice, it does amazing things. So that's one of the practices. And then another thing that you can do, this is called the Kundalini breath of fire. I'm sure that you've heard of it, Stuart. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the Kundalini breath of fire, it is amazing. So just to sort of like feel how your stomach is. Can you guys see my stomach when I move back this way? Can you see my hand here?
We can, yeah.
You can.
I can.
Okay, so I would like for you to place your fist over here and inhale. When you exhale, hold it in. Okay? And this is just going to show you how you breathe. And now you're going to breathe quickly in and out. Every time you exhale, push in, so you can feel what's happening in your diaphragm. And exhale is pushing the diaphragm in just a little bit. Okay? Now let go of your hand, and now when you do it, feel your diaphragm. Heating up really helps. So this is another thing that you can do. Sorry about that. No, right. So I as in a part of my yoga, which is called Kripa Yoga, practice the Kundalini breath of fire almost every single day, especially when I'm cold. Because of my Earth Angel conditioning. I was born with extremely bad circulation, and it heats it up. Like my hands went from cold to sweaty in like a few seconds. So those are some of the things that you can do. Let's see. I was writing down my list of things I wanted to share. Another thing you can do, release judgments. Okay. One way you can
What's
do that,
Pamela?
A judgment is something naughty and mean that you're saying to yourself about yourself. Primarily, I've noticed that Earth Angels aren't so keen at judging other people. So we're not going to cover that today because I just don't observe that you do it. What I observe that you do is you start here. You're really, really mean to yourselves. So I love the Ho'oponopono process, and I love to sing it. So when you have a particular process that you love that will initiate forgiveness, that's the immediate way that you can begin to release judgment. So for those of you who aren't familiar with my Ho'oponopono song, I'm about to now share it. Okay, you close your eyes, put your hand on your heart for a moment, feet on the ground, and I want you to think about the most recent time that you judged yourself or another human being. Okay. And just repeat after me if you feel aligned once you get the words. I'm sorry, forgive me, I thank you, I love you, I'm sorry, forgive me, I thank you, I love you, Ho'oponopono, Ho'oponopono, Ho'oponopono. Ho'oponopono, Ho'oponopono, Ho'oponopono. This will cause an immediate feeling of compassion and the frequency of compassion to just flood your essence. You may feel the need to release something. You may feel really quiet right now. If so, just sit in that and just do that until you feel all judgment releasing. The second thing you can do to release the Earth Angel symptoms here and the hard times would be to release attachment. And I believe Stewart would give a better definition of it than I.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I love the way you put me on the spot. The $50 million question. Attachment. Thank you, Pamela.
You're so good at helping people with this, though.
Attachment. We become attached through an uncertain sense of self, which there are all sorts of derivatives, aren't there, which we call codependency or victimization or, victim consciousness, self-sacrifice. So it's an uncertain sense of self. And that if we can just simply detach, feel stillness and observe, automatically all of those considerations begin to go. I'm working a tremendous amount with Safkiel at the moment, who in conversation with Isis is bringing through the order of the white flame and the order of the white rose. So this is an innovation, an ancient innovation, so it's of ancient times, but at the same time it's an extension of the violet flame law of transmutation, where we're moving through transmutation into purification, the white flame of purification. And so it seems our work, much of our work is being noted through the crystalline grid and the love light circuitry, and how the essence of the white flame brings this extraordinary frequency of gratitude in alignment with forgiveness. And so one of the techniques that Isis and Safkiel have been saying to me, because I know that I'm born of judgment, and so it's very easy for me to judge, is that whenever there is a subtle judgment of irritation or anger, is to say thank you. And in that moment, the point of recognition of, that's my judgment, and also the point of release into the Great Spirit of that energy, whatever that energy is accomplished. Just simply thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And so the gratitude and forgiveness join as a fibrous energy of exquisite detail. And detachment is very much an earth consideration, because we become so locked into our earth bodies, and we love our foodstuffs, we love all of our sentimental pieces of jewelry. I'm surrounded by a very busy desk which has all sorts of potent, wonderful things like crystals, these wonderful crystals. And, I'm constantly reminding myself that these are wonderful friends, but that they will once more return to the earth, just as I will return to the earth and the ether. And one of the ways of being able to enjoy them in their beauty, but at the same time not become attached, is by using the he right through the pineal.
Yes.
He. And it cuts through any of the earthbound attachments.
Do you use any overtones on the E?
And then, because we love our overtones, should we do it together? So we're just moving from E to U. E to U. We sculpt.
I was feeling something that was sounding like he who Look, what's that?
The Urim and the Themim, the great adhesive that keeps the angelic communion together.
Of course, the bridge. Okay, I'm like, why am I doing this, Stewart?
The bridge.
Thank you.
The bridge. And I have to share this with you, but I just picked up the Oracle of the Angels of Atlantis, and look who's with us, Radziel. Radziel is with us, the angel of the mysteries. And of course, look, it's all about the intuition. So here we are, the greatest gift at this time for Earth Angelic Council is that we open up the inner teacher, the intuition. Isn't that beautiful? That Radziel should come in. And we were talking as we were preparing for this wonderful communion with everybody online about the angelic soul call that I would love to give to everybody. It has to be Radziel.
Yes. Okay. Then I'll.
So everybody will receive a copy of a 5-minute sonic meditation of listening to a soul call. Oh, perhaps I should explain.
Yes,
When
please.
the angels first came to me 32 years ago, they came through sound as I meditated on Glastonbury tour during the harmonic convergence. I'll leave it there because everybody knows the story. I always feel, God, I'm boring everybody with this.
I don't know the story. Right.
Well, tough.
I'll look it up.
I was called, and it just so happened that it was the harmonic convergence of August 15, 16, 17, 1987. And I was called to Glastonbury, which is the heart chakra of the world, to read. And at that time, I was really awakening to the mediumistic aspect of my being. I'm no longer doing that work. I spent most of my time out of my body. And then the angel said, could you come into your body? We want you to provide people with information rather than getting out of your body. And anyway, so there I was reading for people, and the world and his wife had arrived. And so there were lots and lots of people. And during mid-morning, I felt very exhausted. So I decided I would have an early lunch break and go. And unfortunately, my clients permitted me to do that. And I went and sat on the tour to meditate. And within 5 minutes of meditating, I heard these extraordinary sounds, these harmonic sounds. And I noticed that Nancy, was it Nancy? Oh, no, it was Dawn, who's one of the panelists, was saying that, to all panelists, was that she was hearing this extraordinary music of angelic nature. And so this is what I'm talking about. Suddenly I heard the entire angelic communion, but I heard these very specific resonances coming through. And they were the signature tunes of the 12 angels, because I then opened my eyes and there were the orbs, the 12 angels of Atlantis. At least that's what I then interpreted, because a voice that I'd known all my life, since I think probably 3 or 4 years of age, which I attribute to Michael, Michael, said, we are the angels of Atlantis, and we are now going to give you a temple of sound healing called the Alchemy of Voice, which you will open and teach internationally, which I have done. And that's all very nice. Thank you very much. However, what I've been trying to do is to find a way of recreating those extraordinarily high harmonics, and particularly in some of the ancient chambers around the world. And because I go to Egypt twice a year and take a retreat full of people, I'll be there in December from the 12th to the 22nd. I'm so excited. I mean, I'm going to Egypt for 50 years, but I can't wait to get there. And I just happen to know the right people. So I hire the pyramid for 2 hours. We have the pyramid to ourselves for 2 hours so that we can do a sonic ritual in the well deep down, which is where the high priestesses prepared the energy of the 3 pyramids for remarkable Osirian rituals. And then we go up into the king's chamber. And that's where I've recorded most of them, particularly Michael, Radziel, and Metatron. And so you can hear the acoustic. The acoustic is extraordinary. So that's what I'm talking about when I say the soul calls. And you'll find that whenever you listen to it, as we've just been sharing these beautiful techniques that Pamela's been sharing, and now finally we reach sound, that you'll feel that the sound harmonics just literally, as it were, positively pierce through, they penetrate through any of the heavy vibration that you may feel yourself surrounded by, whether it's somebody else's despair or your despair, or somebody else's disturbance or your disturbance because you've been watching too much CNN. Switch it off. Then you'll find that the sounds will automatically permeate through the consciousness. And as Pamela was suggesting earlier on, because so much of the waste is held in this crystallized form in the pineal, you'll feel that the sounds will just simply break open and disperse any of the holding or the excrescence or the negativity, whatever we like to call it. And so we get back into our divine birthright or our soul print. And we feel joy spreading through the whole of our beings.
Absolutely.
Please feel joy.
Now, find your sovereignty now. And you know, when you're really having a hard time with that and you're not, feeling particularly inclined to sing, if you're not one of those earth angels that feels that you're gifted with voice, the breath, again, that golden Kriya coil,
Yes.
of angelic light, and then retaining the breath up here changes the wavelength. And when you do that, it is an amazing thing. And unlike most yogis who start out, with the 8 branches, the 8 limbs of yoga, would start out probably at yama, or some basic, tapas and things of that nature. I started out with pratyahara and pranayama. So I didn't start out singing. I started out breathing. So I really realized that I can really, really breathe and expand my breath quickly. But I wanted to go over, because I promised I would, some of the issues that Earth Angels are having that I'm noticing and observing as a channel on this planet. I'm observing you struggling with some specific things, and to kind of give more tips, particularly in regards to Pratyahara, which is one of the kind of a forgotten limb of yoga that people don't talk about. And as a yogi, that was what brought me into the depth of my entire essence. And Pratyahara, when you break down the word, this will be an amazing tool for those of you who don't have many tools to really deal with this stuff that you're going through as an Earth Angel. Pratya means to withdraw, draw in, or draw back. So when you're withdrawing, it's, as Stewart just mentioned, turning off the TV. Turning off the negative frequency music that you may be listening to, turning off the talk show radio when you're on your way to work in the morning, and just sitting in the silence and basking in the energies of sound that would be, stillness or quiet, or if there is sound, perhaps just some isochronic tones or binaural beats or Native American music, or your own sound of chanting some of the angelic tones. So, Stewart, I believe that you call them something different than I do. I call them source tones, and you call it something else in your Voice of Change workshop. What do you call it?
Do I?
You do. You call it something when you're finding your voice. You call it
Oh,
something.
just when we're finding our own signature note, yeah. When
Signature
we find,
note.
but yes, but I believe that the divine chords or the divine tones that you're talking about are the emissions of extraordinary pulsations of light that we're receiving from ultra and extraterrestrial beings. I
Yeah.
feel that the angels are ultra terrestrial beings.
Yeah.
So yeah, whereas within ourselves,
Mhm.
there is the communion or the harmonic bridging of that, which is our own note.
And
You know,
finding your note does an amazing thing. That's why I love that you're doing the Voice of Change workshops, because it's finding your own essence has been a
yeah.
really beautiful thing. And I know that Stuart's going to do one more for 2018 in London, I believe, aren't you?
Yes, it's on Saturday of next weekend, November the 24th. So yeah, if anybody's around or anybody knows anybody, send them along. Just get them to message me on Facebook.
Yeah. And I love your tones. Can't they find your tones on at stewartpearce.com as well for that?
The stewartpearce.com is my public sector
Okay.
website.
I
And so if
apologize.
you look at stewartpearce.com, you'll be very dismayed. But if you
Okay.
go to the angels, because you'll see me in a corporate suit looking very noble. But if you go to the angels of Atlantis, that's where all of the connecting points are.
And
And
we
you'll
can
see
get your
the
tones.
toolbar is very clear at the top of the page. You can click on. There are 8 recordings there that are sonic meditations of
Yeah.
different descriptions, and they're immensely powerful. I mean, they're international bestsellers, so so I'm proud to say. Also, actually, as you were speaking, there's a wonderful recording that can either help with the transmutation
Mhm.
of emotional chaos,
Mhm.
edifying and eliciting higher vibrational frequencies,
Mhm.
or indeed just communing with the angels. And it's being used a lot around the world. You're going to get it on YouTube if you go to Angelic Om Healing and just type in my name, Stewart Pearce, STEWARTPEARCE, and you'll see that that's an extraordinary vibrational frequency that the angels give me. The angels came through when I recorded it.
Mhm.
A quick story. It's a long time ago that I recorded it, and I was working at that time and doing a series of voiceovers for a major newspaper here in London called the Sunday Times, which everybody's heard about in terms of the New York Times. And I knew the guys very well. And I said, if I came in at 8 o'clock one morning, would you mind if I did something esoteric? Because I knew they were techies. They were beautiful guys, but they were techies. And they thought, oh, God, here he goes again when he's talking about something spiritual. So Toby said, yeah, come in. We love you. And just come in and do it. So I went in at 8 o'clock one morning, and there was just one technician there. So I was sitting in the sound booth, just chanting the Om, the angelic Om healing. And I think I prepared him by saying, I'm going to meditate for 5 minutes, and then I'll start chanting, and I'll chant 7 ohms, and then there'll be a lot of stillness, and then you can talk, but don't talk in the middle. And he was wonderful in adhering to that. Well, when I'd finished that process, I opened my eyes, and he's through the glass in the other area of the recording studio, and through the cans, he said, what the bleep did you just do? So I said, well, I just chanted the Om. He said, no, something weird happened. Come and have a look. So I went around, put the cans down, went around into his technician's booth with this spaceship in front of him, with all the varying dials. And he showed me that I'd recorded absolutely 12 beats, the 12 angels of Atlantis. And on each beat, he pressed a button and there was an orb. So the angels had come absolutely through into the Om. There's something very magical about that, which will, again, lift what we were beginning to talk about, which is, well, let's go into the symptoms that people are finding, and we can give tips.
Yeah. So the symptoms, what I'm noticing is migraines, headaches. For females and males alike, I'm noticing a lot of thyroid concerns and endocrine system concerns. I'm noticing that there's some emotional disturbances, particularly anxiety disorders and depression.
Yeah.
I'm noticing kind of, I don't even know how to call this a symptom, but this lack of feeling that you belong anywhere. Lack of belongingness is the best way that I can describe it, and just sort of feeling like you're in your own world and no one else can relate. So it's, and what goes along with that, I've observed, and I too struggled with this. People are like, well, are you a yogi? Are you a shaman? Are you a Buddhist? I'm like,
all of the
if I
above.
had to choose anything, I'd probably choose Tibetan Buddhism or Sikhism, but I just really don't want to choose because I love being a shaman and I love all of these tenets of God, and I will not choose by God ever. So if you notice a little bit of against the grain, marching to the beat of your own drummer, a little bit of oddities going on, idiosyncrasies and eccentricities involving personality. I noticed that most earth angels have more problems with attachments than they do judgments. So the pratyahara practice of withdrawing from overstimulated environments and activities is going to be particularly beneficial. Again, it's the lower frequency sounds and sights of the world. And just really returning to breath, returning to the prana. The pranayama is the breath of life within you. So I do that a lot with breathing practices. I do it with kriyas. I've created about 235 kriyas that help with pratyahara in my Kripa yoga practice. And many of you here already know them, so I don't want to repeat myself because it's mostly my students that joined, and I thank you. So you know all those practices. I've noticed back and neck symptoms in particular. I've noticed a lot of arthritis symptoms and injuries, just very weak bones and musculoskeletal inflammatory concerns. I've noticed autoimmune system and genetic autoimmune system conditions, in particular, a lot of lupus. I've noticed extreme allergic tendency, like especially towards food and all allergens for that matter. And these are the things that I'm noticing. What about you? What are you noticing, Stewart?
What I'm noticing are a tremendous amount in 2 locations. Firstly, in the solar plexus, I'm hearing from people about intestinal cramps, IBS, or just general stomach upsets, and which I feel is to do with the immensely fast pulsation of light that we are receiving, which is disturbing the solar plexus, which is the darkest part of our bodies, in the sense that the alimentary canal is the darkest. And what we're being asked to do by the angels is to heed whatever those conditions are, and find not non-allopathic means, complementary means to release them from our bodies, to express them from our bodies, but also to identify, well, why have I chosen to feel this? And perhaps it's also a recognition of the fact that we need to move progressively into a water diet.
Yeah.
And so we need to eat water-based foods. We must not eat meat.
Yeah. Yeah.
We need to be drinking at least 3 liters of water a day. And, if you do need your coffee or cappuccino in the morning, then just make sure it's one and not several. Et cetera, et cetera. All of those sort of very simple processes. The other area is the pneuma, is what's taking place again, it's liquid, or what's taking place around the lungs. And the lungs, and I believe it's to do with what you so beautifully sharing with us in relation to pranayama and in relation to yogic breathing, that the spiraling golden coil that you were using is just so amazing. And if I may, just to add to it, that one of the things that I'm finding that releases the compression within the liquid of the lungs, the pneuma, is the silver pranic cord going all the way through the spine and taking it right down into the belly of Mother Earth, so to speak, into the bedrock of Mother Earth. And if you like, going also upwards to planet Venus, which is the nearest planet to our planet, the planet of love, and anchoring so that Venus, the goddess of love, Aphrodite, Hathor, and Mother Earth can literally extract any of the negative fibers from our bodies. But you're literally moving in a north-south container ship so that you are in the very center of it. It's not about separation, it's about association, it's about bringing oneself into a divine central communion with both Mother and with the divine feminine consciousness.
May I ask you a question about that modality? When I'm doing it as you were speaking it, and I was feeling a pull, is that normal to feel a pull?
Yeah, literally. So the bridge is becoming even greater and greater. And therefore, because we know that we're increasing light within our cells, and so our energy field begins to expand and expand. So the 8th chakra becomes even more brilliant. And I believe that that's one of the reasons why we see angels as human beings with wings, because the 8th chakra is so suffused that it just pours light around the energy field of the light being that are, as you were saying, mostly columns of light or orb manifestations. Orbs, I believe, because it's the easiest way, I believe this is quantum physics, that it's the easiest way for light transmission to move through weight, space, and time. So it becomes orb-like. There's an entire science frequency associated with that, which is interesting to observe. I try not to let my consciousness go too far there, because then it suddenly closes off my right brain.
If I could attribute that to anything, I'd call it entanglement.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, when I speak to the scientists that talk to me, they say it's that was what they were trying to describe. Let's see, what else have I written down for you guys? Chanting, obviously, we've discussed that. The who, or he, ha, H-A-W, ho, or o without the H, the o. And a lot of the angel tones are vowels, so e, ah. All of those are my favorites. And what I've noticed about chanting angel tones, and I wanted to get your take on this, as a pratyahara practice to really get us to draw back into the God within us. Do you find that when you're chanting them that you start to blend them together to where all the and you're like, and there's tones in between tones that you've never really discovered.
I've got a secret for you here. This is I've got a secret, which is why the word hallelujah is always so associated with the angels. About the word hallelujah, it's one of those root syllabic containers, but holds several entities within it, because hallelujah, when we chant it, spans the entire vowel sequence, all the harmonics that we can produce. And I mean, I don't know if I can actually, you can hear it through this, because we know that although the spoken voice is quite adept within Zoom, the singing voice is slightly distorted, but I'll see if I can do it for you.
I felt it.
You get the whole vowel spectrum. So chanting hallelujah, praise be to God, in other words, in Hebrew, is really good to do. It'll clean you out because it goes all the way through the spine, all the way through the neural pathways into the body, all the way through the meridians.
So it's like ha, and then
Yeah, it's a question of sculpting it like we were doing on the I or E. You need a lot of breath.
yeah, you do, but just you remember when you breathe, people just it's like a balloon going out. It's not a up down. It's like a balloon.
Yeah, it's not.
So that level of practice has really helped me. Self-inquiry. For those of you who have followed my work for a while, you know that my first master on this planet was Sri Ramana Maharshi. And Jesus, of course. And to me, I see them as one being, coming to me as one being, always. And one of the things that he first advised me to do around age 6 or so is to go quiet in my heart and definitely in my head and to ask myself a question. So that question is, who am I? And I finally stopped asking that question a couple of months ago, now that I know. But prior to then, I asked, and the only difference between me and other channels, who haven't exemplified their gift yet, and you will, is that I bug the crap out of God. I mean, I am always asking a question. So he taught me a series of questions, starting with who am I? And when my mind would try to respond, whatever answer, because the mind will try to say, you're Pamela, you're a mom, you're a teacher, you're a channel, you're blah, 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 blah. And when your mind tries to do that, the second question that you would ask would be, to whom do these thoughts arise? And then, of course, you're going to say me or Pamela or the teacher or the whatever, and then ask again, who am I? Rinse, wash, repeat, ask those two questions until nothing arises. And then tell me how you feel. Another set of inquiry that I teach a lot in my mentorship program that came from both Ramana Maharshi and Jesus is as follows. What does God think? Whenever my head's too much and I really want to get quiet, I ask, what does God think? And then I'll ask, what does God wish to say? What does God feel? What does God want to do? What does God want to happen now? And this brings me from a quiet core consciousness of God into creative action, and then back into beingness again. So it's quiet God, creative God, being God. And it doesn't always happen in that order. Sometimes I switch the inquiry around. If you're asking any of those questions, you're not focusing on any of the difficulties that would arise in your Earth Angel experience. Another technique that I would like to share with you before we have to close involves sovereignty, as Stewart calls it so beautifully. And this is a shamanic call, and it is called calling back your power. So you stand wherever you are right now. If you want to practice it, stand and face north or just look north. And when you say the first thing, you look north. When you say the second thing, you look east, and then south, and then west every time you say one of these calls. So here it is. Looking north, I call back my power from all four directions. I call back my power from the north. I call back my power from the east. I call back my power from the south. I call back my power from the west. And then going back north now, I call back my power through the space of all time infinitum. And so it is. I release that which does not serve me now. I call from my power all that which does serve me now. And so it is. One of the most powerful things you can do in your journey as an earth angel. It's incredibly shamanic. Let's talk about Pratyahara one more time. Foods. I'm sorry. I'm a Taurus. I love food. I've struggled with my weight all of my life. And what I'm observing as an earth angel is the American foods have to go in the trash can. I apologize. I love you. Please, I'm sorry. Forgive me. I thank you. I love you. Ho'oponopono it is. But primarily speaking, there's so much sodium. There's so many preservatives and added sugars and food colors and whatnot. And I find that it's strictly toxic, most of it. So when you're going through your markets, please stay away from the center aisles. Go for the fresh, organic fruits and vegetables. Eat 2 raw meals a day, and then have your warmer meals. This is an Ayurvedic thing. Have your warmer meals in the evening. Try not to eat after 7 o'clock. It will disturb your digestion no matter what you're eating. If you eat after 7 o'clock, it's just things that I've observed in my experience as an earth angel on this planet. And please, please, please stay away from the pop and alcohol, drugs. I'm really, really sorry. I know that some of it's medicinal, and I understand, and I certainly don't judge, but I find that it really disturbs the system. So I find that if you're smoking anything, if you must have the medicinal marijuana, it's better as an edible than it would be smoking it and filling your lungs with it. Vapes too, all of it. So I'm sorry to have to say that. And like I said, I understand that it's probably medicinal, but put it in a brownie for Pete's sake.
Yeah.
No judgment here, I promise. I understand it helps a lot of the inflammation and pain, and there's a lot going on in the body right now, and I'd rather you do that than go towards something allopathic for sure. What else? The foods, the sugars, the raw refined sugars, they just have to go. Yeah, it's the sugar and the salt is the biggest disturbance of the electromagnetic energy fields and the chakra systems of the earth angels. So if you can just cut that, you'll be getting rid of 50% of your health problems and struggles right now. Yeah. So if you start there, I'm not going to advise you to stop eating meat if for some reason you feel that you can't. But
it is dead flesh and it has no light.
But just keep that in mind. You're going to have to transmute that because it is the energy of death. It is in our industrialized industry. When you eat something, normally it has suffered, and I don't eat things with feelings. Let's put it that way. Exactly. And that's just my general rule as an earth angel, that I don't eat things with feelings.
Except for joyous plants.
What's that?
Except for joyous plants.
Joyous plants who want to.
The plant elementals are giving themselves to us. They want to feed us chlorophyll to clear us out.
They do, and they want that, and that's their contract with us. But I don't find that animals hold such contracts, with the exceptions of some of the Native Americans who really bless and thank and use every portion of the animal. And if that's your practice, then that animal has obviously asked to merge with you. I used to watch my father and my grandfather stare a deer straight in the eyes and then pull back their bow and arrow and ask, and that deer would walk up. So I know that does happen, as a Cherokee Nation's Deer Clan woman, I know that does happen. So I certainly don't judge meat eaters. There are certain conditions where people cannot take in protein from vegetables. They have to have it from animals. So you have to make your own decisions, but just keep in mind that for the most part in America and the UK is significantly better than the United States, but the United States food is not so good for you if you're going through this time around as an earth angel. So raw fruits and vegetables. And as you go deeper into your ascension, watching your crystalline body really open up, just transforming you, you will notice that primarily you'll just crave fruits, nuts, and seeds and water. Raw honey sometimes, which is also a high pranic substance. So those are the things that I recommend ultimately. If you're going into the breatharian diet, I really haven't found that humans can transcend the need for water yet. And if I find that I am observing that to be different, I'll let you know, but I haven't found that to be the case yet. We do
It's very important for us at the moment, I feel, because we're a water planet.
Yeah, we're a water planet.
And there's a mystery in the molecule, isn't there? There's a mystery in the water molecule, which we can talk about in a moment. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the greatest healing tool of all, if you're really, really distracted by your path here, this greatest and easiest tool When in doubt, serve and don't stop. The body will replenish itself. I am walking, living, breathing proof of it. 3 days ago, I was almost in the hospital. Just yesterday, Stewart was saying he was struggling with 104 temperature. You can transmute it. Okay, but serve. What do you have to add to that, if anything, Stewart?
I think that's beautiful, because it's actually, you've gone through my list as well that I have here. And the only other thing that I'd love to add is fasting.
Yes.
And that needs to be done, of course, immensely judiciously.
Yes.
It has to be really monitored. And so if you're unfamiliar with what fasting is all about, I would suggest connecting with one's complementary health practitioner or a wise counselor like Pamela. And when I talk about fasting, I'm really talking about the fact that if we eat lunch, for example, that is raw food, that we don't eat until breakfast the following morning. So we have 16 hours of fasting. And there is an alchemical process that is taking place. And I'm finding this immensely, I mean, it sounds slightly ironic, but I'm finding this immensely nourishing for a lot of the people in my community. And it's certainly something that I live by once a week, that I fast for 16 hours one day. And that means not eating anything. Actually, but still drinking water, of course.
Water. And if you need to supplement with herbal teas with a little bit of raw honey just to keep for some substance, I find that's really good at intermittent fasting. And I also find that sun gazing, and for those of you who are unfamiliar with sun gazing, I do it at least once a day, but you have to have access to it, preferably as the sun is rising or as the sun is setting. Okay, because the sun can be incredibly bright and you don't want to damage your eyes. So just looking at it from anywhere from 5, 10, 15 seconds if you're very advanced. Don't start at first, about 3 to 5 seconds, and then look away. And then breathe in and then look at it again. And then exhale, look away. Breathe, look again, inhale, exhale, look away. This is how I do this. And I do this while I'm earthing, which is putting, well, you have to have your bare feet in the earth, but if you can't do that, the best that you can. And I find that it works better in actual soil, like soil or sand, not with the grass on it. But if you do what you can, because any of it is incredibly beneficial. And I plop my bottom on it too, obviously not a bare bottom, but a bottom. So I do that while sun gazing. So the earth is my exhale and the sun is my inhale. And I love to do that daily when I'm fasting in particular, but any day that you can do this at least once or twice a day is incredibly healing for the Earth Collective.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Yeah.
Can I say something to you guys? I feel so grateful to have been present here listening to this. I'd never considered myself an earth angel. When people would say it, I go, nah, mate, nah, my horns hold my halo up. Don't be putting me on any kind of pedestal. But after listening to you describe it, I realised actually I am. I relate more to being ground crew, just the one in the body following instructions, leaving all the details to the team. But I'm very grateful for this new perspective. And for the tools that you've brought and for the wisdom that you've shared. And I just wanted to say thank you both very much. I'm as happy as a peacock with two tails to have been able to sit here and bathe in all of this yumminess. So good on ya.
Bless you, bless you, bless you. Much
Happy.
Yay.
Are there any, I share thoughts as well. Amen. Thank you, Julie. That's beautiful. Unfortunately, our time has come to a close, hasn't it? But maybe are there just 1 or 2 minutes if anybody wants to?
Yeah, I'm looking at some questions now that we can run through real quick.
Oh, have you got questions?
Yeah, in the Q&A. Let's see.
Why don't I have questions on my chat board?
Because you got the chat, you got to pull up the Q&A folder. It's kind of one of those Zoom things.
Thank you so much for teaching me. Oh my goodness, I love it. All these wonderful.
What is the primary mission as an earth angel having an aspect of Halal inside of oneself? For those of you who don't understand who Halal is, this is the original name for the other side of the coin, as many like to call it, known as the angel Lucifer, who's known as the morning star. So it's the being, who brings you the voice of choice, free will, if you will. So when you have an aspect of Halal inside of yourself, there could be many, many, many missions attached to that. What I've observed about people who bring forth that angel onto this planet, they are the catalyst of the earth. You're there to help people wake up. You're there to ask people questions. You'll find that you don't want to give advice, but you want to question people with questions that will cause them to go deep into inquiry and will cause a deep awakening. So it could be any mission, but that's one of the many that I noticed.
And it's, my feeling is that we're so fixated on running around like headless chickens to try and find our purpose. And, people say, I haven't found my purpose. Our purpose is very simple, isn't it? It's to optimize our creativity full of love and joy. And I love the way that you were talking about all the varying lights of you. Your mum, you're a wise counsel, you're a medium, you're an avatar of grace. You're multi-dimensional. Do we have to be one thing? No. But, whatever you're doing, if it's baking a cake or making a baby or making love to your husband or boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever, making love to the earth, making love to your children, making love to people. You don't have to go up and embrace them if they are people that you feel are very detached from you, but at least we can stand and hold, as Tina Turner would say, this is a place where love is made. And so our purpose is, as earth angels, we can do all sorts of different things. So don't think of quantification, think of qualitatification.
I like that. Thank you. Yeah, I observed that as well. So many people for the past 18 and a half years as a channel, when people sit before me privately, the first thing is, what is my life purpose? And there are so many, and many earth angels get incredibly overwhelmed, and they're like, well, I've got so many gifts, I've got so many things I love, I have so many things I'm good at, and none of it make money. So I hear that a lot. Money is, it's like trying to climb a mountain. So when it comes to attaching your gifts to your purpose, to money, don't be shocked if money doesn't come right away. Don't be shocked. It doesn't mean you're not honoring your purpose or developing your abilities, but it is, money's kind of a dualistic concept. So you have to learn to be in the world, but not of it, in order to learn the laws of abundance and reciprocity and things of that nature. And it's kind of like, a long journey. I call this the mountain of mastery. And people want to go, if this were the Himalayas, and this is base camp, and this is the top of the Himalayas. You're at base camp and you're like, I want to be up here. And I'm like, I wish that I were a quicker learner. 18 and a half years for me to start making money with my purpose, right? And it's okay. It's okay. Like, I'm abundant. I'm taken care of, but I'm by sure not rich, So it's still a journey for all of us. So what you can do is just...
But your light is producing the emotion of pure joy, freedom, delight. If we do what we love and we love what we do, abundance just flows.
It does.
But we rethink it, do we not? We're rethinking the quantification of the yield of money. And what's interesting for me is that for most earth angels who are not necessarily working in an office, but are determining themselves as healer or as counsel or as psychic or working within mind, body and spirit, that they always have enough, just enough. And that whenever there is a bill to be paid that's a large bill, that automatically some miraculous or magical activity takes place. So it seems to me that what we're really talking about is that we need to reconfigure our conversation with abundance and our conversation with scarcity.
Oh yeah,
and
absolutely.
When we move forward, we're feeling a lack of self-confidence because the modality or the experience or the wisdoms that we feel that we want to impart are new, and as a result of that, we doubt ourselves.
Oh yeah.
And so scarcity automatically comes in. I mean, for all of us, I'm sure you would agree that we go through cycles. Do you go through? I mean, I go through cycles. So, for example, in October, suddenly it's, where have all the people gone? Why aren't the emails pouring in? What's happened? Oh, what do you want me to do? And automatically I hear detach, feel stillness, observe, start chanting. In other words, what's extraordinary, that when we marry, or when we are part of the bridge of oneness that Pamela was talking about, that they guide or the universe rather, guides. And suddenly we realize that we're being given time for recovery. We're given time to really sit deep within the juice of what our spiritual attainment process is, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. And as soon as we're through that cycle process, the clients flood back in. We have to trust it. So belief, faith, and trust, the three concomitants of love. How much do we
And
love?
do it anyway. Do it anyway. I'll share you a brief little story about this. As a young child, probably about a sophomore in high school, very shy being and kind of different. You know, I'm a military brat at that. You know, my mom had just remarried and we're going from place to place. And I'm like, I just made friends. Are you serious? I got to do this again? You know, so I go to this new high school and all the popular people want to be my friend. I'm like, well, there's the cheerleaders, there's the football players, there's the student council president. And I'm like, oh yeah, hi. And then one little being off to the side, she was always quiet and always just standing there glowing, shining her earth angel presence, not a single person ever around her. That's who I wanted to be my friend. So I'm like leaving the football players and cheerleaders and kind of going up to this little girl and we're both just so shy and I'm like, hi, I'm Pamela and okay, you don't want to talk to me. I'll talk to you later. You know, and there goes the bell and I rush back off to lunch and every day I would try again. And she wouldn't utter a word. Every single day. And she wouldn't utter a word. And sometimes she'd nod, sometimes she'd smile, sometimes she'd stand there like a deer in the headlights. And finally, about 3 weeks later, a teacher, you know, was joining us this time. And she said, I wanted you to know that Rachel is deaf and she can't read lips either. So whatever it is that you guys are building must be genuine because she has asked me to tell you that she would like to be friends with you, but it's going to take some effort on your part. So I began to learn American Sign Language and we are friends to this day. And we've exchanged children's clothes. We've exchanged baby gifts. We've every Christmas I get a picture of her kids, and every Christmas she gets a picture of mine. And the reason why I'm sharing this story with you is because along the way, when you're really, really wanting to put yourself out there, and you're like, well, I'm not really getting results. I want you to do it anyway. You're not always going to get the feedback from source in the beings around you that surround you. You're not always going to get a big old yes in your face, you know, from Divine Mother. You're not always going to get confirmation. You're not always going to get validation or approval because that's not the role of the Earth Angel. The role of the Earth Angel is to be the pioneer. Please do it anyway, do it anyway, do it anyway. I remember my very first psychic reading for someone. I had actually called a Native American for a reading, and I just didn't know what to do. And I had a situation at hand, and I had called this psychic hotline. It was really, really funny. And she answers the phone, and she said, my name is Shatwani, and why are you calling me? I said, because I need some advice. And she goes, oh, I don't give advice to other shamans and readers. And I said, I'm sorry, I don't know what you're talking about. And she goes, excuse me, you don't? I said, no, I really, really don't. I'm just a client calling and I just need advice. And she said, all right. So she did. And my question was, how am I to go out into the world? And she said, in the same way, you go out and you share and you are abundant and you're supported in the same way that I'm doing right now. And I said, what? People pay for what you're doing? And she said, well, you just paid me $4.99 a minute for 25 minutes. And I was like, oh yeah, I guess I did. So that very next day I started offering my services and I was floored. And I had no marketing. I had no, it was my first time doing it. And I remember my very first reading was with this woman in a wheelchair, and her member name on the site was Purple Hearts. Her name is Tammy, and she just kept coming back, and she was like, wow, you say you don't know what you're doing, but you really do. And then she would pay in advance. She'd be like, just you find me off the site, forget the site, just come here and I'll pay you whatever you want. And you know, gifts flow if you trust yourself. And I didn't get validation. I just kept doing it and kept doing it, kept doing it, kept doing it, and
That's the key, isn't it? That's the key. The main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. And we vary because of the pulsation of light, on, off. And therefore our thoughts and feelings change. And what we need to do is just choose the highest thought and keep going. We are in service with pure love and pure compassion and pure joy. Even though I feel, really, really challenged today, actually I'm in service. Michael always, I feel Michael was always saying to me, just go to work. Stop complaining.
Get up, let me drag you out of bed and go.
This has been amazing. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to say goodbye. Yeah. So I guess we need to say goodbye to all our wonderful visitors. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All these Ankiel has been here, and Gia, and all these wonderful people.
Thank you, Rupa.
All these wonderful, beautiful people. Rupamarosani. Gosh, what a wonderful name.
Isn't
And
it?
an anonymous attendee.
Wonderful being.
I love you all.
I love you too. Thank you, Stewart. I'll let you get to your life now. Thank you so much. You can find him at angelsofatlantis.com, and you can find me, of course, at PamelaAaralyn.com, and we'll see you next time.
Absolutely.
I'll let you go now too, Stewart. Thank you for coming today, and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Bless you, darling, and we'll talk.
Sounds
Bye.
good. Bye.